Well, thanks for staying with us. This is Firecrackers. Let's get things started now, as I'm being joined by scholar, activist, and professor of sociology, Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in the United States, Professor Onwubiko Agozino, live for us in Virginia. Joins us live on the program tonight. Good to see you, Prof. You look great, I must say, Prof. And of course, all right, we also have joining us live from Brussels in Belgium, Dr. Tarila Markland-Ebeide, a political scientist and adjunct assistant professor from the Brussels School of Governance in Belgium. Thank you so much, Dr. Tarila, for joining us on the program tonight.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we have from Birmingham in the United Kingdom, Dr. Emeka Njoku Newton, International Fellow Postdoctoral at the International Development Department, University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom. I'd like to thank you most kindly, Dr. Emeka, for coming through tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so it's a full discussion tonight, gentlemen, but let's begin the conversation in Virginia in the United States, where Professor Biko is standing by. The Boko Haram insurgency or group started in 2019. 12 years down the line, insurgency has continued to spread and blossom and prospered, if you may. What would you attribute to this, to the reasons behind the growth of this group?
Thank you for inviting me to your program. The question about the Boko Haram insurgency is an old story because it keeps evolving. It didn't start with Boko Haram. Before Boko Haram, there was the Maitasene uprising in the 1980s, but in the current iteration of the crisis, the terrorist group is better organized, better armed, and has pitched battles against the Nigerian state. The core reason for all this is because the Nigerian state is a terrorist state. The government itself defines itself as a terrorist organization. If you look at the law passed by the Nigerian government, it is called the Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2011. It defines terrorism as the use of force or intimidation by any group, organization, or individual for political purposes. That is what the Nigerian government does. It's a terrorist organization, but the Nigerian government is not alone in using force for political purposes. This is found all over the world, even in the United States. According to Noam Chomsky, the United States government also is run on the principle of terrorism, the use of force or threat of force for political purposes. It is worse in the case of Nigeria because the Nigerian government is facing an organization that obviously is supported by politicians and sponsored by interest groups to challenge the hegemony of the state. And so the state is increasingly becoming violent and even inviting foreign military forces to enter and occupy Nigeria to help them to fight the Boko Haram. So the terrorist Nigerian government has surrendered to terrorism as a system of government. That is actually the original definition of terrorism, the reign of terror in the Paris Revolution. It is called terrorism because it was a reign of terror during the French Revolution. Terrorism is a system of government.
Let's cross over live to Brussels in Belgium, where Dr. Tarila is standing by. Dr. Tarila, well, you may want to react to the views of Dr. Agosino in Virginia, but share with us your thoughts indeed. What do you think is responsible for the spread of insurgency? We have indeed different groups, Boko Haram, the ISWAP, and very recently, of course, we've heard of the activities of herdsmen and herders and bandits, of course, in many parts of the country. Dr. Tarila?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you to my colleagues, Dr. Njoku and Professor Agosino, who are sharing the platform with me today. And I am speaking to the issue of why insecurity in form of Boko Haram, farmer other crisis, the herdsmen, bandits, militants, and kidnapping is thriving in Nigeria. I would want to begin from from the point of Professor Agosino. While he may have conceptualized the state as a terrorist institution, I want to disagree with Professor Agosino. I would rather say that the state, the use of violence in pursuit of state objectives, which is for the good or the shared good of society as a whole. That in itself is not terrorism. Terrorism is when people use violence to pursue political objectives that deviate from the agenda or from the collective good of the society. Of course, these are contentious issues that we can debate from left to right. I mean, you quoted Noam Chomsky. These are issues that we can disagree upon, but at the core, terrorists do not pursue political objectives to serve in a democratic manner. The state is expected to pursue, when the state applies violence, it is expected to pursue the agenda or political agenda in a democratic and inclusive manner. So in that way, terrorist groups differ from state use of political violence. And however, in Nigeria, why we see the spread of insecurity in form of Boko Haram and the resilience of terrorist groups such as Boko Haram is linked to what Professor Agosino has said, that the state capacity, despite its laws and institutions and investment, the state capacity is relatively weak. The ability of the Nigerian state to address insecurity is weak as a result of several structural issues. First is the funding mechanism. I mean, I believe that Professor Njoku will talk about that later, which is his research on the transparency in the allocation of resources to funding anti-terrorist or counter-insurgency activities in the Northeast. We have seen since 2010 that the counter-insurgency activities in the Northeast have had operational failures. There are issues. Most recent research by some of our colleagues in Canada have shown that there are operational issues within the Nigerian military institution that limit the capacity of the state to respond to the insurgency in the Northeast. Ordinary soldiers or rank and file soldiers are demotivated. There is limited intelligence gathering or the use of intelligence to pursue the counter-terrorism objectives. And when you look beyond the Northeast and you look at the farmer elder crisis, the inability of the political actors to engage in a transparent conversation on the use of resources, especially land, contributes or fuels the conflict between pastoralists and farmers. And this inability of political actors to have a transparent conversation on the use of resources extends beyond pastoralists or farmer other crisis and goes to other forms of conflict in Nigeria. And finally, let me speak to the issue. Why the issue of institutions? The security institutions in Nigeria have been significantly politicized. They are unable to pursue and achieve the agenda, security agenda, in ways that serve ordinary people, because they have been designed in a way to serve the elites. And with the outbreak of crime and issues of insecurity, they are now unable to serve the people. And you see this in now kidnapping. The kidnapping is now the everyday affair in Nigeria. So the state is unable to effectively respond because the police that is responsible for security of lives and property within the Nigerian state have limited capacity or is unable to transparently investigate and nip this trend of kidnapping in the bud. That will be my submission for now. Thank you.
Outside there, Dr. Tarila in Brussels. Dr. Emeka, let's cross over live to Birmingham, the United Kingdom, where Dr. Emeka is standing by. Dr. Emeka, let's hear your opening thoughts. Indeed, perhaps you want to also react to the opening thoughts from Dr. Agozino as well as Dr. Tarila. Dr. Emeka.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me once again, and happy to be in a platform with Tarila and Professor Agozino. Yeah, I want to correct an impression. You did say something about terrorism starting in 2019. The emergence of Boko Haram could be traced back to the early 2000s. In fact, as far back as 1995 by Lawan Abubakar, who later left and went to Medina, and then it was Mohammed Yusuf who took over from him. And from 2009, I mean, the Boko Haram have become so much more dangerous and lethal in their activities. So yeah, and again, I don't know if I would be comfortable with the idea of terming terrorism as a political system or the system of government. Terrorism is an instrument used by non-state actors as well as state actors. State actors can also deploy instruments of terrorism to, to target or to carry out certain actions against their own citizens. So, and I mean, that is the root of critical terrorism studies. And then going back to the issues that we are interested in trying to understand the root cause, like Tarila rightly observed, I've been doing recent research on the sustenance and expansion of terrorism, and I focus on the financing, particularly the financing the defense sector. Why is it that despite huge amounts of monies, material and resources that have been devoted in curbing terrorism, what we have seen is the expansion of terrorism, and my key argument is that there is an inherent new patrimonial system or patron-client relationship, if you like, between political actors, public officials, and military elites, and which has led to the misuse and diversion of security funds through corrupt subcontractor practices, ghost and inflated contracts on defense procurements, and misappropriation of security votes. So these factors have built a diabolical counterterrorism economy that is leading to the expansion of terrorism in Nigeria. I could go down. For instance, when we look at the defense budgetary allocation to the defense sector from 2000, it rose from 2014 to 2019. In 2014, we had 932 billion. For defense budget, it rose to 1.7 trillion in 2019, and there are also specific funds for various military projects in the Northeast, such as Operation Lafia Do, Operation Safe Corridor, Operation Gamma Ike, and Operation Crackdown. The funds for these specific operations was 24.12 billion in 2014 and up to 75 billion in 2018. So if you look at, these are huge amounts of money. So the question then is, why is it that despite these huge funds to curb terrorism and other forms of violence in Nigeria, what we have seen is violence in all parts of the country, almost not just the Northeast, like my colleagues have said. You see all kinds of forms of violence that are taking place in different parts of the country. So, like I said earlier, defense procurement. Now, the Ministry of Defense they are in charge of defense procurement, although the military also play key roles in terms of how these the type of weapons that are to be acquired and the quantity of weapons that are needed. But however, in political actors, those who are in charge of formulating these budgets and also implementing them, would force certain contractors on security military, and they are forced to accept these contractors. Or else if they come in the future to demand for money, they will tell them there is no fund. And so they are forced. But the military elites are also culpable in how both the political actors and military elites have, in terms of procuring funds, they've used this opportunity to embezzle the funds. Because I have interviewed soldiers in the field, and many of them told me that the weapons that are given to them are more like used weapons. They're not as sophisticated as that of Boko Haram. And so, yes, while these huge amounts of the money have been used to budgeted for procurement, what they see is something else. So that tells you how these funds are being diverted due to various contract scams and so. And another issue, another way these funds are embezzled is in terms of logistics. Now, the military elites have liberty. They have been given the power to manage logistics within the Northeast. Now, and in utilizing the funds that are budgeted for issues such as toiletries, like purchase of foods and all that, you see that this is a platform where there's the awarding of subcontractor businesses, where they award this type of contracts to it could be their spouse, their friends, their relatives. And inherent in this system, there is no form of check, in terms of what was procured or what was bought. Is it commensurate to the amount of money that was budgeted for it? So these are means in which embezzlement of funds take place through these subcontractor businesses in the area of logistics. And of course, security vote is another area that has been a major issue, in Nigeria. I mean, security vote is the independent of defense budget. It is a budgetary or extra budgetary allocation that is earmarked for security, received by the president, the governors, and the local government chairman. It's a vestige of colonialism. I mean, and both civilian and military, civilian and military government have retained the whole idea of security vote, and it's shrouded in secrecy because you don't really know specifically what amount is given, how these monies are utilized. And I got a report from Transparency International that said approximately 210 billion is allocated to security votes in states and 180 billion at the federal level. This was a report in 2017. So 20% of total government spending that year was for security votes. Moreover, only even in the Northeast, they said about 3 states get less than 500 million monthly in security votes. In the Northeast, for instance, a 2014 report by Leadership News, they said that in Borno got 9.675 billion annually. Yobe State got up to like 3.8 billion. So these are huge amounts of money. So what is it used for? I mean, we would expect that at least this would help to help in terms of the military and other security agents within the states, help to assist them in curbing security in the Northeast. But all these have become means for security votes have become a slush fund for governors to carry out their personal interests for their campaigns and to service their loyalists or godfathers. So these are ways in which all these things come together to, has led to the emergence of a counterterrorism economy, which is leading to the expansion and sustenance of terror because it's a money-making venture, and nobody is ready to stop it. So rather, they want it to continue. So yeah, I think I'll stop here for now.
All right, really very deep, very disturbing revelations as well, Dr. Emeka. Thank you so much for your opening thoughts. Gentlemen, let's take a breather. When we come back, we will try to consider why exactly we are seeing attacks very recently in the southeast and south-south. Because it was a problem that began up north, but gradually we are beginning to see attacks in the southeast and of course in the south-south. We'll find out why exactly that is playing out. This is Firecrackers. We're back in just a moment. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. This is Firecrackers. We are live from our headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. And of course, we stay with the issue of insecurity, insurgency, banditry, and kidnappings, as it does appear that the spread of kidnappings in very recent times is really very disturbing. Gentlemen, thank you so much for staying through or standing by with us. Dr. Onwubiko Agozino, live in Virginia, the US. Dr. Tarila Ebeide, live in Brussels, Belgium. Dr. Emeka Njoku, live from the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom. Prof, let's come back to you now. There have been this very recent attacks on police formations, on INEC offices in the southeast, and very recently in the south. Professor Onwubiko, what do you think is responsible for these? The second part of my question is the fact that the governors of the southern states, Dr. Onwubiko, the governors of these states have come together to provide some solutions or resolutions, if you may. It has again generated a lot of controversy from many parts of the country, including the north. Why do you think that is also playing out, Prof?
It's important questions. The southeast historically is a war zone in Nigeria. Let's not kid ourselves. There is no other region that has been targeted by the terrorist state as systematically as the Southeast has been targeted in the colonial and the post-colonial history of that country. It was during colonialism, remember, that riots broke out in Jos against people from the Southeast in 1945, when the British colonial administration accused the Southeasterners as being the ones who were leading the general strike by the Nigerian Labour Congress. It was also people from the southeastern part of Nigeria that were targeted in Kano in 1957 when there was an uprising caused by Awolowo, who was critical of northern leaders. But the attack was against Southeasterners. Same thing happened in southern Cameroon during the campaign or the referendum for whether to remain in Nigeria or to join French Cameroon. The French Cameroonian, the English Cameroonian leaders accused Southeasterners of being the ones who stoned them in Kano Airport when they were going for an independence conference in London. That is a weird thing to say. However, the targeting of the Southeast was intensified in 1966, remember, as a result during the pogrom against Igbo people, during which about 100,000 were killed in 3 months. This has never happened in any other part of Nigeria. And then during the war, the Nigeria Biafra War, about 3 million more Igbo people were killed, mainly through the use of starvation as a legitimate weapon of war. This wasn't being done by non-state actors. This was being done by the Nigerian government in partnership with the former British colonizers who supplied the weapons.
So you have the view that this is a deliberate attack on the southeast and south-south, or just the southeast?
The southeast is being targeted more than any other region. That's what I'm saying. I mean, the targeting has expanded to other parts of the country, because when the rain falls, it will not fall on one man's housetop, but it is the southeast that is the main target of the genocidal state in Nigeria. And Habat Ekwekwe, in his book, The Longest Genocide from 1966, would make the argument that what is going on now is the 4th stage of the genocide against the Igbo. And Nigeria, politicians, Nigerians, ordinary citizens need to come to terms with this and admit that the policies against the Igbo amount to genocidal terrorism. Therefore, the Nigerian state owes an apology to the Igbo, who are exemplary citizens, who are traveling all over Nigeria, developing Abuja, developing Lagos, developing Port Harcourt, developing Kano with their own resources. They should be apologized to, and the Nigerian...
Because we are pressed for time, Prof, I'll need you to just... Yes, Prof, because we are absolutely pressed for time, maybe in 60 seconds or less, kindly respond to the actions by the southern governors in terms of this issue of the ban on open grazing. Will that help? Please, in 60 seconds or less.
Yes, it was Azikiwe who started a policy of ranching with Obudu cattle ranch, and the politicians have
Cross River State.
Yes, the politicians have since consumed all the cattle and turned it into a resort. All over the world, ranching is the way you keep cattle. The Fulani cattle headers should be commended for feeding Nigerians with beef for more than 100 years. The Nigerian farmers should also be commended for growing the grain and the tubers that feed Nigerians. They should not be brought into conflict with one another. Modernization of agriculture is what we need, and the federal government can play a role in that by encouraging individuals who want to go into ranching to set up their businesses with agricultural subsidies, and the farmers should also get agricultural subsidies from the government. That is how it is done all over the world.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Agozino, live in Virginia. Dr. Tarila, let's get talking with you live in Brussels, in Belgium. Dr. Tarila, you have a book. I'm not sure I can find that book now where you co-authored, but the focus was in the South region, Dr. Tarila. What served as a background or motivation for that book? Kindly, very briefly, share with us, and then let's also get your views about the resolutions made by the southern governors.
Thank you very much, and for moderating, but also for bringing the point about our book project to the audience. We have published a book on insecurity in the Niger Delta, emerging issues in Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Edo, Delta, Cross River, and River States. We focused on these issues because we focused on these states because of the trend of insecurity that we observed following consultations in relation to ending militancy in the Niger Delta. The book is a product of the Niger Delta Dialogue, a platform that was established to address the emergence of the Niger Delta Vengeance. It was funded, this dialogue was funded by the European Union, and it brought together different stakeholders to address issues of militancy. However, in 2018, it was observed by members of the platform that issues of insecurity in the Niger Delta goes beyond militancy. It goes beyond armed militants kidnapping or attacking oil industry infrastructure, but that insecurity is now shaping the everyday life of people in the Niger Delta. So this led us to organize a research, to propose a research in each of the 6 states in the South-South zone. And if you read the book, you'll see our findings that each state have both unique and interconnected incidents of insecurity, issues of insecurity. So let's use, for example, the issue of Edo State. Edo State, we find in this research that human trafficking is a key issue, but cultism among young people, especially male young youth, is also a trend that is fueling insecurity. Internet fraud, organized internet crime, fraud, what in Nigerian parlance is called Yahoo, is a driver of insecurity as these groups mobilize resources to protect themselves after carrying out their crimes. In Delta State, we see the same issue of internet scams as a driver of insecurity, as it provides resources for young people to mobilize and to secure themselves in the context of their communities. This is not all young people, but some specific young people, young men and women engage in this crime. The internet fraud is not limited to male youth. Young girls, young women are also involved, and are sometimes used as carriers, as they aid the crime. Going to Biafra, you will see the problem of sea piracy. That it was observed that piracy in the creeks of the night of Biafra fuels insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea. So this is a case where a trend that emerges from one single state constitutes a security threat, not just in the Niger Delta, but across the Gulf of Guinea. And we have proposed that working with communities in Biafra State can help address these issues of piracy in the Niger Delta, but in the Gulf of Guinea. So, just to conclude, the trend of insecurity...
All right.
Yes, 60 seconds. The issue of insecurity in the Niger Delta are cross-cutting, affects each state and they intersect. So what insecurity affecting Akwa Ibom, for example, can also move to the Delta states, to Cross River State. But one point that I have to make before we conclude is the issue of farmer elders crisis, the issue of pastoralist conflict as a driver of insecurity. While in the past we have seen that these issues were limited to the middle belt and the north and to an extent the southwest, we are now seeing in each of the 6 states in the Niger Delta that pastoralists or armed bandits, as they call them in Nigeria, are beginning to emerge and pose a threat. That is why it is important that this issue is seen from a national perspective and it is given the attention that it deserves. Thank you.
Yes, because we are absolutely pressed for time. This meeting ends in 2 minutes or thereabout or less. Let's see if we can hear from Dr. Emeka very briefly. Dr. Emeka, share with us the possible solutions to these problems we have been confronted and facing for quite some time now. It does appear that even the Nigerian government and even the continent looks even helpless. But share with us what you think we need to do differently this time to turn things around.
You're muted.
Well,
muted, Emeka.
Dr. Emeka, your audio is muted, so we cannot hear you. Can you just unmute your audio and go about that again very briefly, please, because we're
quickly. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm arguing that the inherent lack of fiscal responsibility and mechanism to check for transparency and accountability in the utilization of security funds expose government complicity and in its failure to defeat Boko Haram and ISWAP. So it is important that the government address the pathology of funding terrorism, because by dismantling the structures of patrimonial logic, that's have led to a diabolical. If they don't dismantle that, it's going to, reinforce the whole idea of the counterterrorism economy and, of course, the expansion of terrorism. But maybe the issue goes just beyond establishing instruments of check or so. Maybe it's a larger question about the structure of the Nigerian state. For instance, there was a recent security meeting for the president, and we have all security heads there, and they were going to discuss about the problems in the southeast, but there was no southeasterner senior security officer represented in that meeting. That goes a long way. It's revealing about the military or security architecture and how this tilts towards, it reveals the marginalization of a particular group of people within the country, and that contributes. That's one of the problems that we are seeing in terms of the challenges of the violence in the Northeast. So maybe it goes beyond just establishing mechanisms to check the utilization of security funds. Maybe it goes beyond asking ourselves a very, very important question about the structure of the Nigerian state as presently constituted.
Dr. Emeka, that's a good place to leave it. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we have to conclude this discussion or conversation right about now, because the meeting has ended, and of course we have to go to the other part of the program. I'd like to thank you most kindly for coming through tonight, Dr. Onwubiko Agozino, live from Virginia in the United States of America, scholar, activist, and professor of sociology, Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University from the US. And also, we also had earlier as well Dr. Tarila Ebeide, live from Brussels, Belgium, political scientist and adjunct assistant professor, Brussels School of Governance in Belgium. Thank you so much, Dr. Tarila. And of course, Dr. Emeka Njoku, live from Birmingham in the United Kingdom, Newton International Fellow, postdoctoral at the International Development Department, University of Birmingham. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I promise you we will get to have another chat like this some other time and hear your concluding thoughts. But thank you so much for agreeing to speak with Galaxy TV.